Hi, everybody. Welcome. Hi, I'm Rachel McCool. Going to give you a few minutes to join. And for those of you who are joining, click on your chat, and at the bottom of your chat, change it to panelists and attendees so that we can see who you are, because we'd love for you to say hi to us and where you're from. And we'll get started here in a minute. Just want to give everybody a chance to join. So, hey, welcome to our April virtual meetup. And like I said, tell us who you are. I'd love to see who you are, where you're from. We've got people joining. For those of you who are joining, you may not have just heard me, but at the bottom of your chat, make sure to change your chat to panelists and attendees so we can see, everybody can see what you're saying. Wow, we've got Carla from Switzerland. That is fantastic. Thanks for joining. We've got people from all over the country. I always love seeing where you're from. And hi. So I'm Rachel McCool from GoDaddy, and I'm going to be your host today. And I am from San Francisco. I live in San Francisco, and I've been at GoDaddy for 5.5 years. And I manage our community experiences and programs like these virtual meetups that we bring to you every month. So welcome. Hey, we're going to pop up a poll right now for you to tell us if you're currently working for a nonprofit or if you manage or own a nonprofit. We're just really curious on like who's on the call with us today. And, again, feel free to share in the chat not only who you are, but also if you want to share a link to your nonprofit. That would be really, really cool to see, what you do. Because most of you, if you're running a nonprofit or you work for one, typically you're pretty passionate about that, the subject of, or the, what you do. So love to see that. Let's see who else we got. Oh, great, you guys. Thank you so much for sharing. This is really, really cool. So we have so much in store for you today. I think you guys are going to really be excited with what Tara has to share. And our goal for these meetups is to bring you great topics and presenters with practical information and tips for your business. And today, as you know, we're going to talk about 5 best practices for a successful nonprofit website. And again, many of you are super passionate about your nonprofit and work super hard to make it successful. And maybe building and managing your website might not be something you've had experience with or even really want to tackle. So today our presenter, Tara Clays, is going to cover best practices for success. She's amazing. And Tara has a ton of experiences working with all sorts of businesses. But in particular, she really is passionate about working with nonprofits and schools. So I think that you're going to find all the information really helpful, and hopefully you can take some of it and maybe even make some changes starting today for your website. So let's look at poll results. Jesse, can you share that really quick? So it looks like we've got a really good mix of people here with us today. We've got 31% that work for a nonprofit and 40% of you manage one. Wow, that's amazing. And then 30% own one. So we've got a great variety of people here on the call with us. And so I think that and as we go through our webinar today, keep chatting about what you do, because again, we're just really would love to just see you share your experiences as we're all here together. So before we get started on Tara's presentation, I want to make sure that you know about our community. So our GoDaddy community is at godaddy.com/community, and we're going to pop the URL in the chat for you. And it's a really great place to meet people, share your experiences, and get help. And then the other thing that we also have a group on LinkedIn. I don't know how many of you are on LinkedIn, but it's named the GoDaddy Community Small Business Group. And it's another place for you to all connect, share tips, ideas, and updates on how you're doing. And then every Thursday we meet for a half an hour with a small business guest like yourselves. and hear their story. So it's really fun and inspiring. So, we'll add the URL to our LinkedIn group as well in the chat. So please join if you're interested. And also if you're interested in being a guest, let us know, because we're always looking for guests and we're looking for interesting stories. We also just launched our new events platform. Just want to let you know that, because we're doing a lot of events and a lot of virtual events like this. You can find all of the events we're having at GoDaddy. So go there and check it out and bookmark this URL. It's events.godaddy.com. So you can see what's available to participate in. And then one other announcement. Our May virtual meetup will be on tips on marketing your business brand without changing who you are. And that's going to be presented by Matt Johnson. And it's on Wednesday, May 19th from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, which is 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if that sounds like a topic that you might be interested in, feel free to join, and Jesse can share the URL in the chat to register for this event as well. And Matt is a podcaster and author, and he is super engaging. So if you're at all interested in that, I'd really recommend joining, because you're gonna learn a lot from him today. Okay, so let's get started. I am really excited to have Tara Claeys here with us as our presenter. This is the second time we've had Tara present with us, and I've known Tara for about 3 years now, and she's super caring, thoughtful, has amazing experience, and as I mentioned, really loves working with nonprofits. So you're going to find all of her tips really helpful, in particular for how to set up your website or how to think about your website, but also kind of from a marketing standpoint of how do you get donations, which is really critical for all of your nonprofits. Before I have Tara get started, I'm going to have my co-host Jesse Wilson introduce himself and then cover some housekeeping tips.
Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Wilson. I work with Rachel at GoDaddy. I have been with GoDaddy since 2009, and I currently live in the Phoenix area. So happy to have you all with us today. Housekeeping tips, for those of you who are not familiar with Zoom webinars and how it works, I just want to point out some things to you. First, if you go to the bottom of the screen, there's some buttons down there. What you want to see is one of them says Q&A. At the end of the event today, Tara will get on and answer some questions. We would like you to post any questions you have throughout the presentation in the Q&A section. That will allow the other people to see them and vote them up or down. And it just makes it a little bit more organized. So rather than asking questions in the chat, that are relevant to the presentation, please put them in the Q&A section. So we don't have an easy way to move them from one place to the other. So if you can help us out that way, that'd be great. Another thing about the chat, which Rachel covered earlier, go ahead, get in the chat, use that to talk to each other. One thing that you definitely want to do is at the bottom, there's a thing that says to, right above where you type, and you want to change that to so that it says all panelists and attendees. Otherwise, you only send that message to us, the people on the screen here. If you want to post, if you want to share something, like your business URL or your small business, not small business. Why do I keep saying that? Your nonprofit URL. Make sure you switch that over so that everybody can see it, not just us. And yeah, so thanks for being here with us. I'm going to be in the chat and monitoring that and the Q&A, and Jonathan also will be helping out with that.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Jesse. And I want to have Jonathan Graziano introduce himself as well.
Hi, everyone. That's me. I'm Jonathan. I also work with Rachel and Jesse at GoDaddy, and I'm super happy to be here. Really excited to hear from Tara. I'm super blown away by you guys already. I'm clicking on some of these links in the chat to your nonprofits, and I think you're in totally the right place. I'll be watching the chat too and trying to get some of your questions answered throughout, how quick all of this is going already. And yeah, very grateful to be here. Excited you guys are here too. Check out the LinkedIn group. Definitely a big plug for the LinkedIn group. Would love to have you guys as a part of it. And yeah, back to Rachel.
All right. Hey, thank you, Jesse and Jonathan. And we're going to have Tara start. She's going to present for around 30 minutes, and then we'll take as many questions as we can in the time that we have left from you. So as she's talking, like Jesse mentioned, pop some questions into the Q&A area at the bottom of your screen. And Tara, let's get started.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm going to pop up my slides here. Are you seeing them? Yes. Let me get
You're
the
seeing
chat
your
open.
desktop right now.
Oh, let me stop that and start again. How about that?
Yep, that's it.
Good now? Great. Okay. So thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to be sharing with you today, and I'm really pumped to see so many nonprofits, so many .orgs over there in the chat. So thanks for introducing yourself as well. We're going to be talking about 5 best practices for nonprofit websites, and what that really means is we're going to be talking about how to increase donations on your website, how to create donor and volunteer engagement on your website, avoid mistakes, and ultimately looking at some ways to use your website effectively so that it's affordable to run as well. A little bit about me. I'm Tara Clays, and I'm the owner of Design TLC. We are a WordPress website agency in Arlington, Virginia, outside of Washington, DC. And mainly, I'm really passionate about nonprofits, about giving back. It's really important to me as a business owner to have a mission behind what I do. So working with nonprofits and enrichment programs, schools, is a decision that we made because we want to be working with organizations that have an impact on community and on the world to make it a better place. So we're really thrilled to be able to have that focus in our company. And as part of this commitment, we actually donate 1 complete website project to a nonprofit every year through TLC by the Heart. I'm a mom, so I think a lot of my passion for this enrichment industry comes from being a mom. I was a very active parent volunteer, still am an active community volunteer. I also am the co-host of a podcast called Mindful School Marketing, and I'm the former co-host of Hallway Chats, which is a WordPress podcast. In my spare time, I'm a runner and a cyclist, and I am a productivity geek. Get me talking about technology tools and productivity, and I could talk for hours. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. So we're going to talk about nonprofits. I believe that the question that went up earlier maybe have been a little bit confusing in terms of whether you manage one or own one, but I also saw there were some board members that popped in as well. So according to the IRS, a nonprofit is a tax-exempt 501c3 organization, and it must have a charitable purpose, whether that is racial justice, whether it is the environment, whether it is a cultural focus. There are many different definitions of that, but there are more than 1.5 million nonprofits in the United States. And in 2017, which was a while ago, Americans gave $410 billion to charities. So there's a lot that happens within the realm of nonprofits in this country and in the world. And websites are a key tool in that toolbox. In 2019, 80% of nonprofits in the world claimed to have a website. And 13% of fundraising for these nonprofits comes from online donations, which seems like a very small amount, but it's growing very quickly. We're seeing in 2020, especially because of the pandemic, overall giving increased, but for online donations, the percent of increase in online donations went up over 20%. So I expect that the percentage of revenue coming to nonprofits is going to be coming more and more from online giving. When asked about their different marketing tools, nonprofits answered that overwhelmingly website is their key piece, the key piece of the puzzle for them. And if you think about it, that makes sense, because whether you're doing email marketing or other marketing tactics, they're usually driving people to a fundraising platform, to a website or a donation form. So that's why website ranks so high there. I'd like to talk about 5 concepts as they relate to the best practices for running a nonprofit website. Some of these concepts will relate to other types of websites as well. But what is really central to having an effective, successful nonprofit website is establishing trust with people who are coming to your website. People are going to want to engage with you as a volunteer or as a donor when they have confidence in your organization. So let's talk about making your website easy for them to find and to trust. I was glad to see in the chat that many of you put your URL, your domain in there, and that you have a .org. 68% of donors are more likely to trust a .org top-level domain. And I think we have a poll here to ask how many of you have a .org. Is that right? Do we have a poll we can pop up here? Yeah. So while you're filling out that poll, I'm going to tell you a little bit about top-level domain, or TLD, and the history of .org. .org is just like .com or .net. It is a top-level domain, which is the extension that goes on the end of your URL, your domain, your identity online. And .org is one of the oldest TLDs that exist. It was created in the 80s, and it was created specifically for nonprofits. So most of the .org domains are related to nonprofits. That did open up a few years ago, and the .org domain was going to be available to other organizations as well. There's a worldwide organization called ICANN, or the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. And this organization controls all the domains. And there was going to be a venture capital firm was going to own the .org registration. And ICANN reviewed this, and then about a year later, last year, they decided that it would create unacceptable uncertainty for nonprofits if this .org was available more widely. So it's been pulled back, which again increases that trust and credibility of having a .org. 6 to 7% of domains in the world are .org. So let's see, do we have an answer on this poll? Okay, good. So the majority of you do have a .org. And some of you do not have a website yet. Okay, good to know. So how do you get this TLD, this .org or .com or .net? Well, GoDaddy, of course, is one of the top registrars in the world. It might be the top, where you can go and you can type in the domain that you want and see if it's available. And I recommend that if you do this, GoDaddy or whichever registrar you use will show you some options if your top choice is not available. So you can choose something that's close enough or something related. You can also own the .com and the .net, but especially the .com, because as you know, .com is the most widely used TLD. So it's a good idea to own that one in case someone has some confusion, and redirect that to the .org version of your website. The other thing that you need to pay attention to in your website in order to make it trustworthy is these two technical things. This is the most technical part of the presentation today that I will touch on. And the first is having what's called an HTTPS or a SSL, which is a secured socket layer. It's a secure method of securing the communication between a user and your website server. So if someone fills out a form, that communication, if you have an SSL, is going to be secure when it travels from that user to your website. So when you see not secure up in as in this example here, when you see not secure, that means that that website does not have an SSL certificate. And what happened a couple of years ago was that Google really set the standard for this by favoring websites that have an SSL. And that sort of forced a lot of websites to add this. This is done through your website host. Sometimes it's an add-on, sometimes it's built into the hosting process. More and more as it's becoming standard, you'll see more and more websites have this. And as you can see, 70% in this poll of nonprofit websites have an SSL certificate. The other part of this trustworthiness is having a privacy policy on your website. So Google also set this standard, and it was also based on the GDPR laws, the privacy laws that were put in place in Europe and the EU a couple of years ago as well, which really control how websites, how owners of websites can use data from people that interact with their website and the control that users have over their data. So privacy policy is a key part of that. And if you don't have one on your website, you should add one. Looks from this poll that was done, the 71% of nonprofits have a privacy policy. The next element of trustworthiness and building trust in your website is to have testimonials and case studies. I wish I could see you raise your hands to tell me if you have testimonials and case studies on your website, because this is a great way to establish some credibility. If you think about when you do any kind of looking online for a restaurant or a trip you're taking or a haircut, anything you're doing now, we are all accustomed to looking for some kind of social proof. We like to look and see that other people have had a good experience, and then we have more trust in that company, in that business. And the same thing goes for your organization, your nonprofit. So if you have some testimonials, or if you can get some from people who have volunteered, who have benefited from your organization, from your board members, anything that helps to underscore the legitimacy of your organization, that's going to help improve the engagement and the willingness of people to want to volunteer or donate. And then the last element of this first best practice is legitimacy and showing that you're affiliated with some other organizations that have already established themselves, such as the United Way or Charity Navigator. You often see these logos at the bottom of websites, at the bottom of nonprofit websites, and there's a reason for that, because it does establish some credibility there. Okay, number 2. This may be fairly obvious, and this is true for any website, but especially for nonprofits, is making your website easy to use and understand. If people get lost on your website, that's not going to be a very positive experience for them, and they may not stay or go further into your website. So let's look at some things to think about when it comes to the user experience on your website. This may seem obvious, but your website needs to load fast. If any of you have been stuck in a spiraling circle of a website loading and you have left, then you know that if the website doesn't load fast, it's not a positive experience and people may leave. Google knows this too. Again, Google kind of has set a lot of standards for websites. And in this case, Google says that websites should load in under 3 seconds. And if they do, then Google is going to favor you more in a search. So that sort of set a standard. And it's also really important to think about that on a mobile device, which over 50% of people are using a mobile device when they're searching on the internet and using the internet. So you want to make sure that your website loads fast and that it's also mobile friendly. There are tests that you can take online. If you look up, you can do some site speed testing to see if your website loads in under 3 seconds. You can also use Google's mobile friendly test to see if your website passes that test. One way to do that on your own is to look at your website on your phone. And if you can pinch in and out and the text is small and gets bigger, then your website is most likely not mobile friendly. A mobile friendly website, the text already is enlarged on the mobile version. So 88% of nonprofit websites claim to be mobile friendly. So that's a good thing. We see a good trend in that direction. 2 other things to think about when it comes to good user experience is making your website easy to navigate and having a call to action. What does it mean when I say easy to navigate? I'm a big stickler for this because I sometimes talk to people, to clients who want to have cutting edge type of designs for their website. And they look at art galleries or fancy salons and they see the little hamburger icon on their desktop version of their website with a big picture and no header, no list of pages that's really readily available without clicking. And I tell them that especially for nonprofits, tradition is good. Familiarity is helpful. Nonprofits have a very wide range, age range in their demographic that's visiting your site and that are wanting to engage with your site. So you want to make sure that your website is easy to navigate, that it's familiar to people. If you have a phone number that you want people to call, make it obvious. Put your donate button in the upper right-hand corner. Being different in this case is not a good thing because you want to be familiar in terms of where things are and how people navigate your site. The important pages you should have are your about page, your donate page, and your contact page. The contact page can be called the contact page, or you can have an icon. You want to make sure that those are very frequently visited pages, that you have those easy to find. A call to action is also something that may seem fairly obvious, but a lot of times it's skipped over. Just because you have a navigation where people can look to find your pages and your content, you also want them to be able to know what to do, direct them. This usually you see a design under the header of a website is called the hero area, hero image. That hero area is key real estate on your website. And it's a place where you can put one single message, one call to action that you want people to take. So make a clear button, make a good headline, and direct people to what you want them to do. So those are things to make your website easier to use. And we're going to kind of now move into how your website looks and feels, which overlaps a little bit with making it easy to use, but I'm calling this professional design. Best practice number 3, and I'm putting professional in air quotes because I'm not saying that you need to hire a professional designer. These days, with so many options in website building, whether you're using GoDaddy's website builder or Squarespace or Wix or WordPress, any option that you have, they all offer templates which can guide you in design and make it easy for you to have a really professional looking website. You want to keep in mind a few design principles, and that's what I'm going to share with you here. If you think about how you read a book, that's similar to how people read a website. It's called an F layout. So starting in the upper left and going across to the right is how people will read the content on your website. If you think back to that header that I showed you before with the navigation, the logo is on the left and the donate button's on the right. That's how people scan. And people do scan a website, then they go back down to the left and go across. So the bulk of the attention stays within the main content column, and then they scroll down after that. Let's look at some examples. Here's an example of a layout that is not easy to follow. You can see, first of all, if we go back to the idea about navigation, this is all over the place, and call to action. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. But also reading, there's nothing in the upper left. So we're missing an opportunity for identity there. So this is an example of what not to do. And let's compare that to this, where we have a nice clean navigation with a logo in the left. We have buttons and navigation. Buttons and navigation in the right. Then your eye goes back down and you get the headline and the call to action, and then you get an image. So that's an example of a good F layout. Photography can absolutely make a huge difference in your website and how it comes across. Sharp, compelling storytelling photography can make an engaging user experience, and that can lead to higher donor retention. It can also relate to more volunteer engagement. So when you're using and selecting photography, think about a couple of things. In this example, these photographs are not engaging. Right? There's no central focal point. This first one doesn't tell me anything about what's going on there. It's a group of people in the back, their backs. The second example, the photos are blurry and I can't really tell what they are either. They're not really telling a story. Let's look at another example. This one's a better try, right? They're using a cute picture of a kid, but they've kind of cut him out in a very amateur way. So you can see blurry edges. I don't know if you can see that on your screen. And then the look on his face, maybe we could have had a couple of other options where he didn't look like he was squinting and maybe in a little bit of pain. So you want to also think about not just the subject matter, but what kind of emotion that your photograph is evoking. And here's an example of a beautiful photograph, right? The color is great, the resolution is fabulous, but look at what they did. They put the button right in the middle, right on this person's face. It totally detracts from this value of this photograph. So don't only think about the photograph, but think about how it's interacting with the other content. Make sure you look at it to see where the other things that might be overlapping it are landing. And then, of course, here are some great examples. These photographs were making eye contact with our visitor. Their color is great, and I'm getting a good feeling, and I'm really wanting to engage and go deeper into these websites because the photography is very good. Color. Color is in the eye of the beholder, and it's also in the eye of the monitor and the screen. So you can't control exactly the color that people are seeing, which you can do in a printed piece, but on the web, you can't do that. So you want to choose colors that are going to translate well on different screens and that complement each other. So there are tools that will help you select complementary colors and create color palettes. In this case, you can see, I don't know what your screen looks like, but to me, this green color on some screens looks very neon, and it really clashes with the red and the blue. It also, in this case, doesn't really correspond to the logo colors. I made this up. I totally mocked it up. Here are the actual colors on this website. So you can see a color palette with complementary colors that have some contrast from each other, and an accent color that we use to highlight important information and links. And then fonts, of course, typeface and fonts are important. And there's a lot of sort of joking in the design world about Comic Sans, which is this first font that you see here in blue. So similar to the colors, you don't want to use too many colors and you don't want to use too many fonts. So having a professional website really can be based just on your typeface choices. If you choose to use Comic Sans all over your website, it is not going to look that professional because it's not a very professional looking font, and it can also be hard to read. This pink font here is called Lobster, and it's kind of cool, right? It looks kind of fun, and a lot of times people choose fonts because they might look a little bit different and have some personality to them, but it can also be very hard to read. So you want to make sure that the fonts that you choose are readable. And if you're using a fancy fun font, use it very sparingly so that it stands out, and use it in places where it's easy to read the words that you're choosing to apply those fonts to. Here's an example I mocked up. This first example, I changed it to Comic Sans, and then the second example below it is what the font actually is. So if your eye is discerning, and again, people have, it's in the eye of the beholder as well here, but I can tell you that the feeling that's evoked from the first version with Comic Sans doesn't make me feel like this is professionally done. And the last thing I'll talk about with typeface is centering text and emphasizing text. So this is an actual website, and I thought this text was very hard to read. Just like we talk about reading from left to right, when you center all the text in a long paragraph, you can see that your eye doesn't really know. It's got a lot of space to make up for to get to that last line. So you can use centering of text also sparingly. It's a big sign of a professional design when the text is not all centered. So use centering for headlines and small amounts of type. And then for paragraphs, line it up to the left. Also use bolding and font sizes to let people know where their eye should go. People scan. They don't read every word. They're not going to read every word on this page, I can almost promise you. So I changed this. And here I'm headlining the facts that are presented in bold, more visible fonts. I've left justified the text, and this allows people who are scanning to quickly grasp the highlights. You can see the step 1, step 2, step 3. Let's go back and look at this again. If I can go back. If you compare that to that, it's much clearer what those steps are. They jump out at me much more, and it's much easier to read because my eye can follow a better line. Okay, so let's go on to best practice number 4, which then so we've gone from our layout to our colors and fonts and photography to now the actual words on your website pages. Having a relevant message is a key because people need to know what you do. So we want to talk about a mission statement. Having a very clear mission statement that's easy to find on a nonprofit website is critical. People want to know where their donations are going. They want to understand what you're about. They want, again, to have an idea of your reputation and your legitimacy. So if you don't have a page called mission statement, have it very clearly delineated. I highlighted this here in yellow. It's not really highlighted, but it's an example of, it doesn't have to be really long. It doesn't have to take up a whole page, but you want to make sure that it's clear to people what you're all about. Similar to testimonials and case studies, you also want to show some metrics and your impact. This can have a very big effect on prospective donors' impression of you and their motivation to donate. You want to show them in some clear way how their money is going to help your organization help others. So this could be done with an infographic showing these numbers and the impact that their donations or their time will have. And then finally, your website is not a static thing. You have the opportunity to update and refresh the content based on the time of year and campaigns that you may be running. 30% of annual giving is done in December. And of that, 10% is done in the last 3 days of the year. That's a huge opportunity. So be thinking about what's happening on your website in October and November leading up to December that's going to make you stand out, that's going to compel people to want to choose you to donate in that end of year rush, and make your message different so that your website doesn't look stale, that looks like somebody has been paying attention to it and has updated information. Okay, let's look at number 5. The most obvious for a nonprofit, of course, a best practice for your nonprofit website is to make donating easy. And I'll also say make engaging volunteering easy as well, but I'm going to be talking about specifically taking donations on your website and fundraising now. There is a difference between online fundraisers and your website. So organizations like Giving Tuesday, which started in 2012 and is an amazing organization, they raised almost $2.5 billion in 2020. That's a great organization to be involved with and to conduct a fundraiser, but it's not your website. Facebook is a great platform for doing fundraisers, but it's not your website. So you want to have your own donation page, your own donation forms on a website. And then let's talk about what that means. What is important for a donation form? Your donation form is the opportunity for you to not only collect donations, but increase the donations that you receive through these forms. So for ongoing online presence for your nonprofit, you need to have a website that communicates your messaging that I just talked about, but also that houses or links to an online donation form. Of course, the form has to work. Just like best practice number 2, it has to be easy to use. And research shows that the simpler the form, the more likely people are to donate. You probably find this yourself. You don't have a lot of time. So don't ask superfluous questions such as people's age or their interests or nice to know demographic information. That's going to scare potential donors away. Then there are some other things that I've listed here that you should include in your donation form. Fee recovery is a key, and it's almost a standard thing now. It allows donors to check a box, which increases their donation to cover your credit card processing fees. It's usually around 3%. So, and many people do opt to cover this. This can significantly increase your bottom line, right? Recurring donations have also become almost standard in online fundraising. The ease of setting up recurring payments makes it easy to offer with most donation platforms. A recent study showed that 68% of nonprofits offer recurring donations now. So it is becoming more and more widely used. And over 50% of donors in the US and Canada were enrolled in a monthly giving program. So you probably know that this can make a huge difference in your operations when you have a guaranteed ongoing cash flow coming in. The next thing on the list is corporate matching. And interestingly, I've been doing this for a long time, and we talk about a corporate matching on our donation forms and give people an opportunity to participate in them. But as I researched it, there's an estimated $4 to $7 billion in matching gift funds that go unclaimed. And as a matter of fact, I looked at my husband's company and they have a matching gift program that we have never participated in. So I think a lot of people just don't think of it, or maybe they're afraid to, but Double the Donation has a widget that you can put on your website where people can search to see if their company participates in a matching gift program. And over 65% of Fortune 500 companies do offer matching gift programs, and over 18 million individuals work for companies with matching gift programs. So this could be a separate campaign, even a separate message in your email marketing or on a page on your website that talks about corporate matching to try to boost this. The other things that you can include, and I recommend that you include on your donation forms to make them more effective, are allowing people to designate a fund. If you have different places that their money can go, let them choose that. Allow them to give a gift in honor of someone. This is also a really good growth opportunity, and we see it more and more with nonprofit donation forms, is that people have enough stuff. And so instead of giving mom and dad an anniversary gift, we do an honorary gift in their name to a nonprofit that they like. And then we have them receive an e-gift card, which you can do from your donation form if you're using a platform that allows that, to send them a little card, a little email that says that this has been done for them. And along the same lines, you want to make sure that you have a thank you email and that you allow people to easily access a receipt, a PDF receipt, and a receipt in an email. Make sure that your donation form, allows people to donate with a credit card, with PayPal, with different payment options as well. So I hope that's not too overwhelming. That's what a donation form should do. So then the next thing is, how do we do that? So there are lots of different ways to do this. I think we have another poll now that I'd like to have you guys fill out to find out what you're currently using for your donation form for your platform. I've listed just a few here. You may have, there are many. I've listed more on the page. So while you're filling that out, I'll talk a little bit about these different kinds of platforms. So there are many ways to collect donations. As I mentioned, there are fundraising platforms like Facebook and GoFundMe. Those you have more, they may be regulated differently than your website would be. And you also have limited control over the content and design of those forms and what goes into them. What I've listed here are just some of the software options that are available for collecting donations online. So it's important to consider the costs involved with these platforms, as they often charge a monthly fee based on the number of donors or other things in your database, plus a processing fee for each donation on top of that 2.9 or 3% credit card processing fee. So it can get quite expensive to use a third-party platform. Some of them are free. Give Lively, for example, is a free platform. But the advantage of a large platform like Network for Good is that it offers an all-in-one solution. So especially for a small nonprofit that doesn't have a lot of staff, these tools have a lot of built-in things that help you retain donors, communicate with your donors, and increase donations. So it can be a really great option. Just know that you may be paying for that. Also, these options give you limited control over your online presence. So they control your data and they control how you use the data and how you can use it. They also offer usually limited design and functionality. So those are all things to consider if you're using one of these third-party donation platforms. Let's see what the poll results are. Wow, a lot of people using PayPal directly. Interesting. Interesting. Only 1% donor perfect. Okay.
Yeah, and Tara, there's a lot of other payment platforms that people are using that they put in chat too.
Okay, I can't do that, monitor that. It's the same. I'll look at that as well. So the other thing that you can do is have your own website. And I mentioned that there are different website builders out there. People can use Squarespace, people can use Wix. We use WordPress, so I'm going to speak specifically to some WordPress options. WordPress is free out of the box and comes with lots of different templates. You can choose where it's hosted. And so it is a very affordable way to have a nonprofit website. You can then link to one of those third-party donation forms from your website, or you can put your donation form on your WordPress website. We love Give WP. It's a free WordPress plugin that creates donation forms for you and makes it easy. They have premium add-ons that can expand the functionality of what Give can do. There's also Civi CRM, which is a very, very robust full CRM, which stands for Customer Relation Management System. So it has a lot of the same things that Network for Good and Donor Perfect have built in. It's also free out of the box, but it's very complex. So you probably need a developer to help you set that up. But once you have it running, it can be a really, really robust way to collect donations on your website. And then you can use a form plugin on your WordPress website. I saw a number of you have a WordPress site or other websites where you can connect that form to your payment processor like PayPal or Stripe or Authorize.net. So you can connect that form. Those are not, this is not built for donations. So you may have a little bit of limitation. I have one client that we use a Gravity form and we have all kinds of calculations and things built in. So it can definitely be done. And you can make it look very professional as well. So there are lots of options for WordPress, and I'm sure Squarespace and Wix, those other platforms also have opportunities for you to have forms on your website that will connect to those payment processors. And as we sort of just round out the conversation here about online fundraising and donation forms, there are some trends that are really important to mention. First is text to give. So 12% of nonprofits are now using text to give. And this can be really effective, especially at events, because people don't have to go to a website. They can just type in. So a lot of the donation platforms that I mentioned offer this as part of their whole system. Social sharing, make sure that you have the ability for people to share your form, your donation page online, put those sharing buttons there for them to use. And then peer-to-peer fundraising is really, really growing. So this is like a crowdfunding type of opportunity that a lot of donation platforms are offering. 30% of nonprofits are using peer-to-peer fundraising. The Global Autism Project raised over $2 million by using a peer-to-peer fundraising in just 1 year. We built a peer-to-peer fundraising for our client AFAC. And this is just shows you how it works. People can go to the website, fill out a form, and it creates a draft of a campaign that they created. So whether it's a birthday or a corporate program, they can create this, they can put in a photograph, a little story, and then we approve it and it goes on the front end of the website and they can share that link with whoever they want, and people have a connection directly to that person that created it or that company. And we've also seen companies use this as a competition. So then they kind of are going against each other. And that's a great way to encourage people and motivate them, incentivize them to participate in a specific fundraiser. So a lot of the third-party donation platforms offer peer-to-peer fundraising. I believe GiveWP has it in their roadmap. And it's a great way it really can boost your nonprofit's revenue. So to wrap up, let's just review these 5 things because I went over a lot. First, make sure your website is easy to find and trust. Make sure it's easy to use and understand, that you have a professional design, that your message is relevant, and that you make donating easy. Okay, so I'd love to now take a look at the questions and see what I can answer here. Let's see.
Tara, that
Yes.
was amazing.
Oh,
Thank you
thanks.
so
That went over
much.
a
So much
lot.
really great information. And by the way, for those of you who are with us, we are recording this. We will share the recording. We'll share the presentation. We've got like about approximately 10, 11 minutes. We'll take as many questions as we can. If we don't get to all of them, Tara, I think probably would be willing to maybe help write up a few answers to some of the questions.
Sure.
And we're going to post all of this in the GoDaddy community. And then we'll be sending out an email to you. Probably give us like a few days to get all the information together. And then we'll be sharing it through email to you as well. So So let's
Yeah,
get to
great.
questions. There's
Okay.
a lot of really good ones. And
There
by the
are,
way,
yeah, let's see.
thanks everybody for the really great chat going on. So much cool conversation happening and sharing. And that's one of the things that I love about doing these meetups with all of you as well. So Tara, maybe we can start from the
Yeah,
top. Richard had
okay.
asked which nonprofit certification is better. For example, the BBB has WISE Giving Alliance standards for charity accountability.
Yeah, that I don't know the answer to. I mean, I think Charity Navigator is a very well regarded organization. I'm not familiar with BBB, so that's sort of outside of my realm of expertise. I'm sorry, I can't answer that one.
Okay.
Yeah, so best practices to get testimonials. I'd love to answer that one because it gets into my passion for cool tech tools. So there, if you look up, there are a bunch of video embedding tools out there. There's one called Video Ask. And what they allow you to do is create a video that you can send to people, and then they click a button and they can leave you a video back. So that's a great way to do that. If you have a small organization and you know some specific people that you'd like to reach out to, I would recommend that you set up a Zoom call with them and record that. Having video testimonials is great, and then you can always pull from that some text versions of it. Adding along that line, a question about embedding Google reviews. For nonprofits, I don't know that Google reviews are as applicable, but if it is applicable to the type of organization that you have, then for sure Google reviews can be very helpful. Complementary colors, cooler.com is one. If you Google color palette generator, you'll come up with a few different ones. Okay, let's see. Do you want to direct me to any that's jump out at you, Rachel?
Yeah, I think, let's do from the top. So Richard was asking about what, grant money.
Grant money.
Raising websites.
Yeah, so for actually funding websites, there are a lot of agencies like mine that offer pro bono service for websites. There are also hackathons you can look up in your area that will often choose a number of, they'll have an application process and they'll choose nonprofits and they'll build or redesign a website for you. So I'd recommend that. There are grants for, Google has grants for advertising. And Adobe also has a program where they'll do some branding work for nonprofits as well. So there are a lot of opportunities out there for people like us who want to give back and help nonprofits on a pro bono basis.
Yeah. Hey, and by the way, for all of you who are still with us, Tara's contact information is here on this last slide. So if you're interested in talking with her, please ping her.
Yeah, please do.
She's a great resource. Yeah, and the other thing to mention, Tara made a really good point about especially getting donations is for corporates. A lot of corporations do matching, and a lot of people don't utilize that. And so definitely, for your donors, make sure that they think about that and ask them to do that because it's a fairly easy thing to do. We do that at GoDaddy. And James was asking, does GoDaddy have donation forms platform with website? Hey, Jesse, do you know the answer to that one?
Yeah, it kind of depends on what you're talking about, but we do have some donation capacity within the website builder, which I think is just limited to PayPal, but I think there's also an integration with GoFundMe. If you're on, if you have your own website, like through WordPress, though, obviously that opens up a lot more of that stuff.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
And then
widget question.
Yeah, Misha is asking, is it a good idea to add an embed of our Google reviews for testimonials?
Yeah, I think I answered that one.
Oh, you did answer that one?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Mm-hmm. That's okay.
Let's see what else. Maybe Fiona, what tools can we use for recurring donations? I only know how to direct folks to PayPal.
So PayPal will allow you to collect, will allow you to do recurring donations. PayPal can be a little bit difficult to navigate through, but you can also use it within a form, as I talked about, depending on what platform you're using. Many of them have it right built in, but if you're using PayPal, you have to make sure that you have that option turned on and that you're on the right kind of plan. Stripe, I believe, has it automatically built in.
Okay, awesome. Hey, here's one from Janet. How does peer-to-peer work?
Yeah. So normally it works where there's what we call a front end submission, which means someone can go onto a website and fill out a form to create or request a fundraiser that would be customized for them. So they fill out this information, and then whatever platform you're using allows that to then become a web page on your website that has a link that can be shared by the person who started it and all their friends and family. And that particular page collects money on the website as your own fundraiser. And usually it has an end date. So it's usually for some specific cause. You've probably seen a form of peer-to-peer fundraising if you've ever done sort of one of these 5K races for usually some cancer or something like that. Oftentimes you'll see someone can make their own page and you join their team. So that's another kind of peer-to-peer fundraising.
Okay, great tips.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see what else. We'll take one more. Brian is asking, what's the best way to get your website on the front page of a Google search?
Oh, you should have been at Amy Masson's talk last month, right? So,
which by the way, the recording is in our community.
Okay, so you'll need to go watch that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes,
for sure.
yeah, that's more than I can answer in this amount of time. But that's called search engine optimization, or SEO. And there are many, many elements that go into SEO. And I think for nonprofits, it's a very tricky area to dive into because there is so much competition. So you'll be wanting to look at local SEO if you're a local organization. And Google does offer grants for advertising. So I'll mention that you can apply for a Google grant for advertising, and that will help you come up in searches as well because you'll be using their advertising platform.
Yeah, that is kind of $1 million question. And for those of you who are in our community, if you go to godaddy.com/community, there's a virtual events forum. And in that forum, you can find all of the virtual meetups that we've done and the recordings and the presentations. And actually, Amy answered some questions from last month. So please use that as a resource because it's a great place to listen to some of the past meetups and some of our wonderful customers who have a lot of great information to share. So let's take one more. Carmen said that her website is a disaster, Tara. And she said, I heard that every year you donate a website. Could we apply for it?
Sure. Yeah, please do. So if you go to my website, which is designtlc.com, under services, I believe there is a page called TLC from the Heart, and there's an application there, and we review those applicants over the summer, and we award one project every fall. I'd be delighted to see what you have there.
And that's amazing that you do that. I think it's really wonderful. As I've told Tara and shared, like, I am personally passionate about a lot of nonprofits. I donate to nonprofits. As a business person, I see a lot of really good stuff on their websites and through their emails, and I see some stuff that I'm like, ooh. And one of the things that I mentioned today with Tara, we were chatting before we started, was be really careful about asking for money all the time through your emails, because that can sometimes turn off people who are really good donors or potential donors. And just being really conscientious of the content you send out, keep it focused on like what your organization's all about, and provide some new and relevant information for people. Like today is Earth Day. So for nonprofits that are focused on the environment, it's a great day to get out there and talk about things that you're doing and, impacts that you're making. And maybe even if you're going to ask for donation, have it down in a tiny little section at the bottom so that it's not really super, prominent on the marketing email. But hey, everybody, thanks so much for joining. I know some of you have had to drop off. We really, really appreciate you being here with us today. Tara, thank you so much for all of that great information.
My face is so red. It's really cold here. And I'm wearing on Earth Day, and I'm wearing this really warm sweater, so I'm not usually so red.
Well, it's, it's April 22nd, and it's hard to believe that it's so cold in different places in the country, but that's just the fact. So
Yeah.
just quick reminder, check out our community, our LinkedIn group. Jonathan, I know, posted the LinkedIn group URL for you to join. And it's just, again, it's a great opportunity to connect. Don't forget to register for our next month's meetup. We'll be sending out more information on that. So you'll have the opportunity to hear from Matt Johnson, who's going to present on tips on marketing your business brand without changing who you are. And that's the same thing with your nonprofits, right? Like, you got to showcase who you are and why are you so passionate about what you do. So it's a really good one to join in. Take care and have a good rest of the day. We really appreciate all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy
Thanks, everybody.
Earth Day, everyone.
Yeah, happy Earth Day. Bye now.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.